All right. So, one aspect that I have not really had the chance to get into, given the carnage on the ground as Israel is continuing their ongoing offensive into Gaza, has been the censorship aspect and sort of the crackdowns on any dissidents around the world who are willing to criticize the Israeli government or willing to go to bat for Palestinian liberation. And so, I have a couple different things that I wanted to get into here with you guys just to give you a perspective on what has been happening over the last couple of weeks. So, here to start us off was probably the most insane story that I've seen on this aspect of this. So they say here from Haaretz, Likud minister, and Likud is obviously the coalition government that Benjamin Netanyahu is a part of. They say Likud minister formulates emergency regulations to imprison citizens who harm national morale. I mean, this is taking me back to like when Eugene Debs, the socialist here in the United States, was imprisoned during World War I for being an anti-war advocate. Okay, anybody who harms national morale is going to be imprisoned, apparently. They say communications minister Kari is promoting regulations that would allow him to direct police to arrest civilians, remove them from their homes, or seize their property if he believes that they have spread information that could harm national morale or serve as the basis of enemy propaganda. Okay, so a couple of different things here. First of all, what the fuck? What the fuck is this? Okay, I thought that this was the only democracy in the Middle East, right? That's what Western leaders typically refer to Israel as, the only democracy in the Middle East, where apparently you can be arrested, you can have your property seized, and you can be imprisoned. Okay, if the government of Israel suspects that you have not spread misinformation, but just spread any information that could harm national morale. So what does that mean? If Israel goes in and they bomb mosques and they bomb hospitals and they bomb civilian infrastructure and you are critical of that, or if they continue with their ongoing expansions of illegal settlements into the West Bank and settler terrorism in the West Bank against the Palestinian people, if you're critical of even the government of Benjamin Netanyahu from a domestic perspective, even if you're not talking about the Palestinian people, okay, any time that you spread information that could potentially harm morale, okay, then you could potentially be subjected to these incredibly authoritarian and fascist policies here from the government of Israel. A little bit more details here from Avi Bar. He says communications minister Shlomo Kari is promoting regulations again that would allow him to direct police to arrest civilians, remove them from their homes, to seize their property if he believes that they have harmed national morale. According to a draft emergency regulation titled, quote, limiting aid to the enemy through communication, drafted by the communications minister after consultation with the national security minister, Itamar Ben-Gvir. Okay, this motherfucker. The jurisdiction to impose limitations on publications will be sweeping. Okay, so this was drafted in accordance with National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir. Now, this guy Ben-Gvir, let me remind you guys, is a convicted terrorist in Israel. Okay, this guy was not allowed to serve in the Israeli military and the Israeli armed forces because of his extremism. I want you guys to understand how insane you have to be to not be allowed in the Israeli military because of your far-right extremism. And again, a multiple times convicted terrorist or terrorist sympathizer is Itamar Ben-Gvir. And this is the legislation that's coming from the Benjamin Netanyahu government. And as a reminder, part of the reason why Benjamin Netanyahu decided to form a coalition government with guys like Itamar Ben-Gvir, with guys like Smotrich, okay, is because he is facing his own criminal charges within Israel, and he wants to protect his own ass. Kind of similar to how Donald Trump, running for president right now in the United States of America, facing, 4 different criminal indictments, over 90 charges right now, and is trying to seize the power of the president of the United States in order to avoid potential accountability for those charges. It's a very similar situation over in Israel right now. And so he's allowed all of these far-right goons within his government to do shit like this, okay? They continue, it will apply to both the general public and the media, as well as both local and foreign media, in contrast to the stated objective to limit Al Jazeera. They say it will also apply to the publication of factually correct statements. Let me say that again. It will also apply to the publication of factually correct statements at the minister's discretion. Okay, so again, I don't know what to tell you guys. This is straight up authoritarianism. Again, from the only democracy in the Middle East, according to the United States here. This is what the Benjamin Netanyahu government is doing. Why is he doing this? Maybe it could have something to do with the fact that we have gotten polling data from inside Israeli sources that show that the overwhelming majority of Israelis blame Benjamin Netanyahu for all of the chaos that is currently unfolding. Okay, again, trying to protect his own ass, forming a government with these far-right lunatics and terrorist sympathizers inside Israel, okay, in order to protect his own ass. That's what's going on here. And they are willing to not only, obviously brutalize the Palestinian people in the West Bank and Gaza, flattening it into oblivion, but also to eliminate whatever even pretense of democracy they have left within the state of Israel, even for Israeli Jews. And that is what is, inherently clear in this kind of a policy that is being promoted. We also have some actions here that have been taken by U.S. tech companies, unsurprisingly. Here from Middle East Eye, Palestinian Facebook news platform suspends operations after ban on page. They say Maidan al-Quds news network has relied on Facebook for its audience, but a ban on Meta has made their work almost impossible, says their director. Okay, so you could look at this and you could say, oh, well, this is a biased source in favor of Palestinians or in favor of Hamas. I don't give a single solitary shit, okay? In the same way that I didn't give a single solitary shit if you want to make an argument that RT, for example, is biased in favor of the government of Russia. Regardless of what you think about these sources, the purpose of having free speech is so that even if you disagree with the source, you are able to understand their perspective. You are able to understand what they are reporting on so that you can get a coherent picture of the overall narrative of what is actually happening on the ground. That is the purpose of allowing this. And I think that Crystal Ball on Breaking Points, obviously one of my bosses at Breaking Points, she made a good point about this the other day, which is that the only time, really, that free speech matters in this country, and around the world for that matter, is when you disagree with it, okay? That is the only time that free speech actually comes into play. Obviously, free speech is a very easy thing to advocate for when it's something that we're all in agreement on, right? Murder is bad, or whatever the case may be, some easy topic, right? But it's when you vehemently disagree with people that it actually comes into play, and that your underlying principles come into play as to whether or not you are actually going to advocate for free speech. In this case, we have gigantic, multi-billion-dollar tech platforms that are just, deciding unilaterally to silence some Palestinian voices because what exactly? Because they disagree with their conclusions or their framing or anything. I would love to see them go and ban the IDF for their dishonest and inaccurate and the misinformation that they have passed throughout history of different situations that they have been involved in. I mean, again, the idea that we have some sort of like a ministry of truth that is sitting at the top of deciding who gets to speak on any given platform that is dictated basically by prophets and by billionaires and by some corporate board or whatever the case may be in San Francisco and Silicon Valley. I mean, it's just completely insane. So we have Al-Quds network being banned from Meta platforms right now in the midst of this ongoing Israeli bombardment inside Gaza. Over 4,000 Palestinians already killed, over 1,000 children already killed, over 500,000 to 1 million Palestinians in Gaza already displaced, escalating violence in the West Bank, already limited access within Gaza in terms of internet connectivity for people on the ground trying to report on what's happening, and we have them going out of their way to ban Palestinian sources. I mean, completely insane. We also have this: France bans all pro-Palestinian protests. This is a headline here from CNN. Not exactly a socialist network or a leftist or a liberatory network here that we're talking about. CNN. The headline is France bans all pro-Palestinian protests. Okay, so this is what's happening around the world. I've seen similar things in Germany. I've seen similar things in the United Kingdom, where they say that potentially it could be illegal to fly the Palestinian flag at one of these protests. I mean, this is what we're dealing with, right? In France, what is supposed to be this sort of like beacon of liberty throughout modern history, right? The beacon of liberty now banning specific protests because they disagree with the narrative there. We also have here more domestically, as pointed out here by Ryan Grimm, J Street is warning Democrats that if they don't support this Meeks-McCall resolution offering unconditional support to Israel's war on Gaza, which has no mention of protecting civilians, then they will lose J Street's endorsement come re-election. So in other words, you have pro-Israel lobbying firms, okay, and these massively influential groups within Washington, D.C. politics, who are coming out here and threatening members of Congress that we will not endorse you for the next election. We will run somebody against you. We will fund the opposition to you if you do not come out and endorse legislation that specifically allows for Israel to do whatever the fuck they want in the Gaza Strip right now. And again, I talked about the other day the legislation that has been put forward calling for a ceasefire, and just as a reminder, we had 13 out of 435, roughly like 5 or so percent of the House of Representatives in the United States of America that was willing to sign on to legislation calling for a ceasefire. Okay, and also we had the State Department putting out that memo that explicitly, called for their own members within the State Department and politicians to stop calling for a ceasefire, to not use phrases like end the bloodshed or end the violence or restore calm. These are the kinds of things that the United States government, the United States State Department, think are objectionable, or in the words of Karine Jean-Pierre, the spokesperson for the White House, say that are, disgraceful and repugnant. Okay, those are the kinds of things that they think are disgraceful and repugnant, calling for a ceasefire. Okay, we also had this here in my home city now of Washington, D.C. Cops are arresting Jews at the White House who are demanding Biden push Israel towards a ceasefire. Can't make this stuff up. And this was at an If Not Now protest that I myself was actually at. And I was there on the ground when some of this was happening, when cops were going out and, sort of like, nudging their way into protesters and sort of beating the shit out of protesters in certain circumstances. And also got kind of shoved on my ass myself. So we can actually watch the video here. It was actually posted on the Breaking Points channel, where I was going out to film some content just for Breaking Points to give a perspective on the protests on the ground. Again, these are Jews who are standing up against a genocide in Gaza right now, calling for a ceasefire, and this is what the police do. So I mean, this was a line of some of these protesters who decided to link arms and try to block one of the entrances to the White House for the police. And keep in mind, I mean, I was literally in this spot that I was filming in here for 30 minutes, an hour or almost, and I mean, I'd seen police come and go and sort of move these protesters out of the way. I had not seen anything escalate to the point that this video is going to show. But here you have a security, or a I guess Secret Service security officer who decided to sort of just plow his way through these interlinking protesters here and shove me directly on my ass for absolutely no goddamn reason whatsoever.
Ceasefire now! 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 Ceasefire now!
That's what you call it.
So, obviously a little bit butthurt about it, pun intended there, but I mean, obviously you see the Secret Service member here who apparently is allowed to rock a Blue Lives Matter hat, and he, again, I mean, I'd seen multiple police officers sort of cross this line before and gone in different directions. It's not as if this is the only entrance that you could possibly get behind that fence line, but it just decided like they were, I guess they decided that they were getting a little bit frustrated with the protesters who were out there, and they said, you know what, let's just go and push them out of the way and shove some of them to the ground. I happen to be one of the people, one of the journalists who was on the ground there who got shoved on my ass. So it is what it is. Obviously I'm completely fine, but just to give you a little bit of a perspective there in terms of some of the protests that have been taking place directly at the White House and some of the clashes with the Secret Service or clashes with the police themselves. We also had this here also domestically, as pointed out here by Ryan Grimm in The Intercept. They say Starbucks is now suing its union after solidarity with Palestine tweet. Let me read that again. Solidarity with Palestine tweet is now causing a lawsuit to be filed by Starbucks corporate because they think, I don't know, this makes them look bad that the union, which is, autonomous and separate from the corporate side of Starbucks, that they are showing solidarity with Palestinians who are currently suffering under an absolutely brutal apartheid regime and ethnic cleansing and a bombardment in the Gaza Strip, that some of their workers may show solidarity with Palestinians right now amid this moment. Okay, and they decide, okay, we got to sue them. We got to try to destroy them on top of the other, obvious, multitude of different illegal union busting tactics they've used in the past. Now they're trying to file an actual lawsuit against the Starbucks Workers United union. So, I mean, listen, all of this is just to say that Obviously we have a lot of different news that has been breaking in this ongoing sort of, Israel and Gaza back and forth over the last couple of days and now weeks at this point. But it seems to only be escalating from this point, and it makes it, again, that much more difficult when you have a limited access to resources on the ground in Gaza, given the cutoff of electricity and water and other supplies to the Gaza Strip by the government of Israel. It makes it that much more difficult to get accurate sources on the ground. And I think that it makes it that much more important that you actually have people who are, capable and willing to come out and to speak accurately about what is actually going on here and speak on the history of this. We also had reports from MSNBC that they are sort of like somewhat sidelining a lot of their Muslim anchors, guys like Mehdi Hassan and Ali Velshi, who have been giving, some of the best coverage of this conflict that I've seen from mainstream media. And so we have all of these different things culminating. Bans on protests in different countries around the world. We have Facebook removing pro-Palestinian posts on their platforms, on Instagram and on Facebook, on all meta platforms. We have the Israeli government explicitly saying that we have the right to seize property and to arrest people who are harming national morale, not even spreading, verifiable misinformation, but just harming morale with accurate information. Okay. And we have here in the United States protests taking place right outside the White House. I've been there myself. I've seen them. And there's incredible amounts of solidarity that are taking places at those protests. And so, listen, this is a point where it is simultaneously more difficult than ever to actually give an accurate and a nuanced and a historical perspective on the current situation with Israel and Palestine. But I think that it's more, it's a more important moment than, potentially ever in the history of this conflict that, we have voices who are out there who are willing and able to, give an accurate perspective in terms of what is actually going on the ground.
Everyone is saying good politic guy has the best politic. Believe me, no one does it like him. Believe me, everyone is saying